Hey there, record nerds. We are sponsored in part today by our friends at AudiophileuSA.com. Over 42,000 vinyl titles in stock, all excellent, near mint, and ready to ship around the world. There's plenty of Coltrane, Bill Evans, Art Blakey, alongside Black Flag, Led Zeppelin, and John Lee Hooker. Get the absolute cleanest used records at AudiophileuSA.com. Discount code The Vinyl Guide for 10% off your order. That's AudiophileuSA.com. And we are also brought to you today by GrooveWasher.com, the one-stop shop for all your vinyl cleaners, protective sleeves, and accessories. Groove Washer knows how to treat your records right. Ask for the Groove Washer by name at your local record shop or hit up GrooveWasher.com and use discount code VinylGuide10. And with that, on with the show. Well, hey there, everyone. Welcome to episode 322 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors, music nerds, and purveyors of good taste. My name is Nate. I do this here podcast, and I absolutely love talking to my heroes about vinyl records. And today, we have got a great guest, record producer, and the guy who's earned the title, The Jazz Detective, Mr. Zev Feldman. Now, Zev has produced some of the most interesting, amazing jazz titles of the last decade through his ability to find and restore obscure and lost recordings from some of the greats, including Thelonious Monk, Art Blakey, Bill Evans, that's just naming a few there. And if you've got the Lee Morgan Live at the Lighthouse 12 LP box set, well, his fingerprints are all over that too. Now today, Zev and I cover all this ground and more. Plus, he gives us a few clues about what the future may be holding for some titles that may be right around the corner. And of course, if you like this conversation, there's more of it available to our patreon.com/vinyl guide community. Yes, there is an extended version of our interview with Zev up there, only for supporters of the show. Join us up there, help support the show, and get lots of extras, including early episode access, ad-free interviews, secret episodes, and heaps more. Plus, there's going to be some really cool stuff just for devoted Patreon supporters. So be generous, become one now, do your buddy Nate here a solid. Join us at patreon.com/vinyl guide, where you get to hear the rest of the show. Oh, and finally, if you enjoy jazz records, we've got a lot of other jazz interviews that you can enjoy anytime by simply subscribing to the Vinyl Guide on your podcast app and scrolling through back episodes. Interviews like Episode 231 with jazz legend Lou Donaldson, Episode 173 with Michael Cascuna of Mosaic Records, Episode 157 with Joe Harley of Tone Poet and Music Matters fame, Episode 105 with the man Don Was of Blue Note Records, and heaps more. Subscribe, scroll, and enjoy the Vinyl Guide podcast. All right, that's it with the upfronts. Let's jump into our conversation with the jazz detective himself, Mr. Zev Feldman.
Okay, good. No problem. Everything is fine then. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's really nice to be with you. I appreciate the invitation. I've seen a lot of the great work that you guys have done, and it's really exciting. I just feel honored that you'd even want to talk with a guy like me, being caught up in this whole thing. No, I mean that sincerely. I wake up every day. I feel so blessed and privileged to do something for a career that I love. And 30 years in, man, I mean, I'm just like, I feel so fortunate. So to talk to you about all this stuff today is like really personally exciting for me.
Well, Zev, I mean, allow me to say the honor is truly mine. You are our nerd saint. You know, thousands of years from now, if we turn vinyl records into a religion, it's going to be you that we say our prayers to and have the images of you on our candles. Okay? So
you're too much. You're too much. Let's leave that for Rudy Van Gelder and Alan Lomax. And,
they'll be there too.
Yeah. Okay, good. You don't need me. You got the bases covered.
You'll be an apostle. That's okay. Not bad. Look, Zev, thank you for taking the time because, as you rightly point out, we are record nerds, okay? And just looking at your life's work from afar, I would absolutely imagine that you are a record nerd as well and caught the bug at a very young age. Would that be true?
I did. It really I was very young, and it was started with my parents' record collection. I mean, that's where I found all sorts of enjoyment and zoning out from the stresses of the other world, from the world or whatever. I just found it as like this haven for enjoyment and something that I learned from. And music has just connected with me my whole life. It was the one thing since a young age that was able to captivate and hold my attention. And I'm talking about as a young boy with ADHD, who was zooming around like all over the place. Music was something that soothed me, calmed me, interested me, and really just, I was captivated by it. I'm hooked on it. I'm transfixed by it. It makes me feel a certain way, and it's been a good friend to me my whole life. I mean, I feel very fortunate that if you're able to find something in this lifetime that speaks to you, and you're very fortunate to have a passion, and music that has been that to me.
Was it jazz early on, or were there different forms of music that you found appealing?
Yeah, I have to say that if I had to look at my parents' record collection, their Beatles records were something that really I gravitated to. I was like a total Beatle freak at a very, very young age. I mean, I remember when John Lennon passed away, it was literally probably the first death experience that I experienced in my life. And it was very upsetting and traumatic and something. But I'm not just that, because my parents were playing jazz. My parents were playing classical. My mom would play Greek folk music at home if it was on record. I mean, my parents' taste was all over the place. But for me, I grew up in the 1980s in a period where top 40 radio wasn't like top 40 is today. It was the Rolling Stones and Paul McCartney and the Who doing Eminent Front, and then came Nucleus, Jam on It. Like this whole myriad, this crossroads of all sorts of different styles of music. But I grew up on the radio and listening to radio. But classic rock going into jazz was like a bridge for me, because I spent a lot of time listening to so much. And I found what I was gravitating to was so much about improvisational elements. As they say, the way that these guys bent the strings, talking about Clapton and Hendrix and Jimmy Page and oh my God, Pete Townsend, all these guys. But for me, it kind of served as its bridge, because I really started loving the way that the aspects of the musicians that would solo and improvise. And that was like the pathway. It just happened to be that way. I remember I wanted to listen to rock radio in the car, and my dad would force me to listen to jazz. I saw Miles Davis on TV when I was a teenager, and that was kind of like a bridge, and it led to other things. So anyways, I'm getting possibly ahead of myself.
That's all right. So going back, you were a kid of the 80s, so CDs were coming in when you were a teenager. Did you still keep buying records? A lot of people who lived through the 80s and 90s that were still into vinyl really just built up their collection for really cheap around that time. Were you one of those people?
I really wasn't, but I went through a period in the early 80s of buying vinyl. But I really also have to say that cassettes were a huge thing for me, buying tons of cassettes and eventually CDs. And my obsession with vinyl really came full circle when I relocated from New York back to Maryland in the late 90s, and my mom and dad gave me their vinyl collection, and my dad gave me his Dual 1019 record player, which was something that as a child I was never allowed to touch. He would have to flip the records. No, my hands were off. So, and then from there, I just found myself living even more and more in record stores, and it wasn't just going to Tower Records or Olson's or Melody Record Shop or other places, but it was really about used vinyl, and that opened the door a whole nother realm of discovery. And yes, I was still able to hang out in places, and man, like the education is unbelievable. Being able to discover, and my vinyl thing really kind of kicked back in the late 90s when my parents gave me their player, probably around 99. But I've been surrounded by records. I still had records around me, and then it became really a big deal for me. I mean, record stores I'd stop in every day on my way home from work to go shopping. like Joe's Record Paradise in Maryland, which has been, I tell people I like to think maybe I got some sort of honorary degree. I don't know if it'd be a doctorate, but it certainly an education, like hanging out in a barber shop, talking with people, listening. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
That's all right. So describe for us your record collection, because I've seen pictures of it. And as you mentioned earlier, it makes a fantastic background. But tell us about it.
Well, my collection is really diverse. I mean, I have it separated by genre. Basically, I got to say, a lot of people know me. Jazz is the intersection of where I seem to live and where I've ended up. I still go back and listening to everything. It is a cornucopia of different genres of music. You'd be surprised to know I also collect even country and Western traditional records from the 60s. And I love collecting classical. I love collecting jazz. I try to sort it by genre. There was a time where it really became like my sound garden where I was separating stuff. I didn't have the time. So unfortunately, right now I have kind of like that new arrival section. And there's like jazz here and there, but for a good chunk of it, it's sorted by record label. And I find that as a way of being able to go to my favorite Prestige and Blue Note and, everything, even Columbia, Xanadu. I find that that's like a very comforting way. I spend the most time probably listening to jazz vinyl and also select classic rock and classical. I listen to a lot of classical. I had the great fortune in my career of representing, for the most part, classical and jazz artists. So for me, like, I really live in that headspace, and I love collecting piano recitals. I'm really into piano sonatas from a whole myriad of different pianists that I got turned on to working at Polygram at first and Universal Music Group. And I love it. Like, it's not just one genre of music, but it's sorted by label. Like I know where my Blue Notes are, right? So like I have a way of being able to go right to certain things that I'm trying to find. And it's nice to be able to do that, but I can lose myself for long periods of time just doing that.
With your record collection, you have a lot, I'm assuming a lot of the original pressings, highly collectible, highly desirable. Do you pay a lot of attention to that? Are you like, well, this is a $700 copy of blah? Do you get down to that level, or is it just kind of the listener? And if it's a first press, then all the better.
It's a combination. There is certainly that holy grail, that mystique, that interesting thing about holding an original. And I'm really lucky. I've got a lot of original pressings. I think it's really, and I also have repressings, and I have Japanese editions, and I have second and third editions. And sometimes it's about having your favorite record. I have some records I have in multiple editions, but but to me, it's really about the music first. But I won't lie, there is something very sexy about having an original Blue Note Lexington Avenue pressing from a certain artist, or a West 63rd label, or a Bergenfield address for the Prestige. The label, hey, that's part of the aura. That's part of the folklore. That's like, it's a lot of fun. And you know what? Damn it, I want to embrace the history and the culture. And for me, it's very fascinating. I think it's fascinating too, Nate, going to places like Japan, where I also see things there that I don't even see sometimes in the States. Rare records, original pressings. But I have all sorts of things that I gravitate to. Even sometimes, I love the music, of course, but hey, man, I love the artwork of David Stone Martin, one of my favorite illustrators. Gosh, I'll tell you, man, there's quite a few of these certain old Verve pressings that I have in 10 inches and things that I've acquired over the years on the hunt, if you will. But it just brings me joy of like going into a shop and traveling and finding things. And you never know what you're going to find. And it's just, I love rummaging in record stores.
I always, maybe said this a couple times on the show. Our ancestors were hunters, right? And in the
Mm-hmm.
modern world, there's not a whole lot of hunting we do. We go to the grocery store for our food, and things are pretty, set and organized. But for me, at least, the thrill of finding something, the thrill of stopping by a yard sale and like, oh shit, look at this. This is, they're asking 20 cents for this thing that I know is highly collectible. To me, that thrill is just unparalleled. Is it the same with you?
Oh man, I can relate with that kind of hunt. I'll share something with you too. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I moved back to DC, something that I did quite a bit was going to estate sales and rummage sales. And but I would scour the newspaper ads to see where the open houses were going to be. And it was like, you'd go to the house and there'd be like a basket numbers in it on the front stoop, and you'd get your number and they'd let 10 people in at the house at a time. People wanted to go to the Limoges and the china and the jewelry and the furniture. Where the heck are the records? And that's like where I would go. And I got to tell you, I actually ended up flipping records for a period too. Oh my God, it's such work listing albums on eBay. I got a little tired with it. But for a while, like I was doing that. I wish I had more time to. And it's really exciting when you can find, hey, I remember finding this stash of 10 inches for $0.25 a piece. And like, Mercury and all this stuff that I really enjoyed. And there's certainly a thrill of, oh my God, look at this. This is steel, all because I came out there. And I've also spent quite a few shekels for expensive pieces too that are worth their value.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's about really the destination. It's something that I'm going to listen to and come back to. And, I have things that I've even gotten rid of. It's not about quantity. It's about quality for me, especially now. And I do find myself from time to time, just, do I really need this? I mean, this could make somebody else more happy. But I'll tell you, that's really not the case, because I always hold on to stuff that I know that I listen to. And, I know where my tastes are, and they're all over the place. But, if it's not in my purview, I'm not really necessarily going to collect.
So, okay, you walk up to your record shelf, you feel like listening to something like a Lee Morgan or whoever. You've got an original 58 copy of The Cooker. You've got a brand new copy, a fresh one of The Tone Poet. Which one do you put on?
It's really interesting. We talk about the Tone Poet series because I have to tell you, it's absolutely astounding to me. And, there's something about being able to do a direct transfer from the original audio tape right to the lacquer, which provides an amazing result. I like both. It's funny you mentioned The Cooker. Probably on paper, possibly the rarest recording that I have in my entire collection. And I have a copy that belonged to a very famous musician whose family actually, I was working with them and I bought it from them. But it's a record I love. But you know what? Tone Poet's unbelievable, because I have heard things in these Tone Poet pressings, records that I've listened to 100 times. And I listened to the Tone Poet. Maybe it's because a lot of that was during the digital era too, with CDs. Man, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a consultant for that company. I don't work on the Tone Poets. My hat's off to Joe Harley and Don Was and Kevin Gray and RTI and that team that have made that really an incredible, successful, enjoyable listening experiences. But you really get to hear the fidelity and something about that tape, going back to those. In that case, it's tough. I love them both. Maybe I don't know if I would compare that, I had the original versus maybe some reissue that came down the line. I'd probably still choose the Tone Poet, but the original has a charm that I love listening to too. It's hard, anyways. It really depends. That's a tough one.
It is. Well, I'll tell you the reason it comes to mind is because I just sold. Well, about a year ago, I sold my original Cooker because the Tone Poet came out. I put them both on my system in a spectrograph. I couldn't tell the difference, and someone was offering me an ungodly amount of money for that original one, and it was like, well, I'm not going to miss anything except bragging rights. So let's make him happy, and let's make me happy. And of course, my wife got happy because the bank balance went up a bit. So to me, the joy of collecting years ago was because these were truly kind of the best versions of themselves. It was hard to really kind of, sometimes you go to Japan, you get lucky, some of the reissues that they had. But up until recently with Music Matters, Tone Poet, it seems to me like, okay, well, the line between which one is the better listening experience is really blurred now.
Well, it's amazing, right? I'm going to tell you the first one, the Music Matters, Jackie McLean Right Now. I remember I bought my copy off the wall at Amoeba, and I took that thing home and I said, we're going to see what this whole hubbub is about. Oh my gosh. This was a record I had listened to so many times, but being able to, man, you hear it, you hear the difference. It's really exciting because for guys like you and me, a whole nother experience with that level of clarity. But I remember listening to that when I was like, oh my gosh, I need more of these. And I mean, I embrace it. It's so exciting. It's so exciting. And imagine for younger people and new vinyl collectors that haven't had that luxury, you're going to get an incredible experience listening to those new editions.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because Rudy Van Gelder already made his edits on the tape with everybody, right? And you can go right from the tape. You can't always do that. It's like if I find a tape of a live concert, there can be dropouts, there can be all sorts of volume issues, different things that happen that a mastering engineer needs to address. Sometimes first in digital, oftentimes in digital, and then later can add their sheen to it, if you will. It's really so much of what it is. It's this magic that these guys do with their proprietary technology, talking about a Kevin Gray or a Bernie Grunman or Chad Kassem. So yeah, man, it's exciting. There's a lot for us to lose ourselves in with this obsession of the music.
So what we're talking about now is that world of pre-issued stuff. The tapes have been around. Luckily, they've been cared for quite well, especially in the case of Blue Note. But then there's this other world of tape collectors, and some of the materials you're starting to find, which is, I believe is more akin to the kind of almost the Wild West. You're not sure what you're going to get.
Oh man, is it ever? I mean, there are some archives. I have one I work with where we've uncovered absolute gold. And there were nights where the engineer walked away and the board and it went right into the red, and then the whole tape was just shit afterwards, like where it'd be very difficult to, the music could have been happening, but there's then distortion. There are certain things that you can fix and certain things that you can't. It's a hunt, it's a crapshoot. Sometimes it works out with really incredible results. You may have been lucky where the engineer was there at the console mixing it live and he got the best results. That's always something that we hope for, right? Doesn't always happen though. Sometimes like people that were making tapes, it wasn't always with a skilled engineer, and it wasn't for, hey, we're going to have this archives and in 50 years from now, we're going to put these out. Nobody knew. Sometimes it was just because the organization that was putting on the show wanted to have a copy for them to play back at their party later afterwards with the employees that were working the whole night and didn't have a chance to enjoy the music. I've experienced that before, but it's exciting when it works out. It's always a roll of the dice. You just don't know until you listen.
So with these tapes, and I want to talk about these projects because some of them are my favorite releases of the last few years. Incredible. I imagine a lot of the tapes you hear, the quality is quite compromised. How do you weigh the decision about what's historical enough to maybe have the listener suffer through some average or even poor quality?
We'll be back after these messages.
Hey, have you checked out AudiofileUSA.com lately? There's been a major new website redesign, and now it's even easier to search and dig for deals. AudiofileUSA.com has over 42,000 used vinyl titles in stock, all excellent and near mint condition. They sell nothing but the best condition records. And AudiofileUSA.com is not just for rare and collectible records, it's got something for everyone. All genres, from punk to pop to jazz to classical to metal to psych and more. Head over to AudiofileUSA.com. Dig for the deals, fill up your cart, and use discount code THEVINYLGUIDE to save 10% off your purchase. There's something for everyone at AudiofileUSA.com. And I know that Groove Washer makes the world's best record cleaner. Hundreds of people around the world have tried it and given Groove Washer top ratings online, including Rolling Stone magazine, 5 out of 5 stars for vinyl record care. But have you seen the new Groove Washer Groove Guard record sleeves? Now you can slide your freshly cleaned record into an archival quality sleeve for short or long-term storage. I mean, why are you going to clean your records only to slide them back into the same old dirty sleeve? That's like showering and putting your dirty clothes back on. Head over to GrooveWasher.com, grab a record cleaning kit and some Groove Guard record sleeves, now at a super low introductory price, and it gets even lower with discount code VINYLGUIDE10 at checkout. That's Groove Washer Groove Guard record sleeves, GrooveWasher.com, discount code VINYLGUIDE10.
Now we return to the program already in progress.
No limits.
I imagine a lot of the tapes you hear, the quality is quite compromised. How do you weigh the decision about what's historical enough to maybe have the listener suffer through some average or even poor quality?
You know, it's really about how important is the music. And, you know, something that I've come back to so much, which again has been a learning experience working on productions, is you got to put yourself in the listener's shoes. And I try to really strive for creating a curated listening experience. You know what? I want the listener to be able to listen to an album on repeat all day if they feel like it, you know. But there are certainly instances, you know, look, we take a look at what the Dean Benedetti recordings that were just solos, you know, there's a lot of bebop recordings. I think of some of the Charlie Parker recordings that have come out all over the decades. And, you know, you got to really evaluate what there is. You know, there's this balance and give and take involved. And if you have something that's a holy grail recording, you know, we're lucky. We live in a time where there are certain limitations of things that can be done sonically to improve it, but not always. And, you know, if you got the holy grail and it's something that's going to make people happy, I think it should come out. Doesn't always mean needs to be on vinyl. You know, vinyl is obviously such an important medium right now, but it's really about getting the music out there, getting it officially released. I mean, there's just a bunch of steps. It's such a hard thing, you know. Listen to John Coltrane of Love Supreme live in Seattle. It's not a audiophile recording that was done by today's standards. You know, we're lucky that that document exists. And it's no surprise that release has made so many people happy, just being able to hear it. And I remember how it was for me when I first heard those tapes. And, you know, we're lucky. Guys like me and my fellow archival producers that are out there, there is just something so thrilling about being able to lay your ears on something and knowing that, oh my God, this is incredible and this is important and all these other things. But there is a, you know, you have to weigh that. We have to ask ourselves this, is there ultimately, when you're doing these projects, I hate to say it, but I'm involved in forecasting and running numbers and profit and loss analysis, because you got to make sure that there's really going to be an audience. Well, how many would buy it? How many could we forecast? Because, you know, putting out an archival release is like driving a car off of a lot. Sometimes it's a Toyota, sometimes it's a Mercedes, you know, and there are expenses, and this is, you know, an outlay of cash to do things the right way, where you pay the musicians and you pay the publishing, and you want to have a great presentation where you can too. I'm often thrust into that decision and into those crosshairs of being realistic and having to put on my business hat. But you know, it wasn't always that side of it. The first 14 years of my career were spent working in sales and marketing. and selling and promoting catalogs from Verve and ECM and Mercury and Island, a whole myriad of different labels, and really getting a sensibility about the way that record audiences react and how things sell. I think that really prepared me. I've certainly sat in sales and marketing meetings where the A&R staff comes in. I'd be like, those guys are crazy. We would never sell that many. But, it's like, I'm fortunate because I carry that experience with me that allows me to really make sometimes very instantaneous gut decisions. Sometimes I really have to ruminate on things too. I have to ask for my distributors and collect feedback. But it's a process. But it's a process that I love. I mean, I really love working on these things, but it takes time.
What are some of the recordings that you are aware that exist, but maybe not to the level of quality that's releasable?
Well, there are tapes in certain archives that I know about. One in particular that I'm a very big fan of. I work with this one archives from an art society that used to put on concerts every weekend for many decades. And some of the recordings, the music is great, and sometimes the quality is really challenging. But it really depends on the music. I know of some Charlie Parker recordings right now, which I'd love to see out, actually from a few different sources. But one of them, it'd be really difficult. And I struggle sometimes because, on paper, some things can look really good and really enticing and really exciting. But you got to really think about how many times someone's going to listen to something. You have to decide really where the audience is. And I have to constantly step back and say, are other people going to feel the way that I feel? Because it's really easy to get whisked away in the excitement of finding this tape. And even with me and one label chum, for instance, that I work with, it has made so much of the work I do possible, where the two of us have just been so swept away. And then it's like, yeah, do we go back and start putting pen to paper and writing how many tunes are complete versus incomplete? And do we have an actual release there? But see, that's also the magic too. I think as long as we stay excited, the passion is there. Like I said, it gives me a reason to get up in the morning and get out of bed, Nate. I mean, that's really what this is about. But you got to think, people are going to put their money up, the resources, the label. Are the fans going to be supportive of the release? Are they going to appreciate it, to be like, this is a stinko? You really got to you have to be really realistic. You're dealing with money at the end of the day. Sometimes money that's not mine. So it's not always even about making money. Can we break even? What's it going to take for us to have something come out officially? And their tapes, we were talking about YouTube earlier. Let me tell you, man, that is the Wild West. But there's a difference between a tape being on YouTube versus it actually existing, really officially releasing in this world where the musicians are paid, publishing is paid, and there's respect that's treated to a recording.
Do you know if there's a recording, any sort of tape, good quality, poor quality, whatever, of Lee Morgan's final night at Slugs, the night he got shot?
I haven't heard of such. I haven't. Slugs is really one of the cherished jazz shrines, if you will. I mean, so much folklore and music happened there, and a lot of the music of guys that you and I just we love, and so many of the listeners of this podcast, not that I'm aware of, but it would be interesting. That was such a horrible night and events and things that happened. But I'd hope that maybe we can find some more Lee Morgan. He really matters. I mean, and he's continuing to inspire and make so many people happy, and that makes me happy that I get to be a part of that. That's very nice.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a bit about the Lee Morgan Live at the Lighthouse set.
Sure.
Well, that 12 album set, I mean, caught him just at the, his reblooming, his renaissance. And that's kind of the Lee Morgan that, thanks to you and Don, the Blue Note team, is now trapped in amber, right? That's we don't remember Lee at his low point now. We remember him at this triumphant emerging moment, which thankfully has been captured in this project.
It's an exciting one.
Yeah, 12 records. Did you meet with much resistance in conceptualizing this? Did it start as 12 records? Did it go up? Did it go down? Like, what was the original vision, and how close are we to it right now?
Wow. Well, we're like right at the dream realized version. I mean, this is what you would hope it would turn out, but it doesn't always turn out. Let me tell you, several years ago, I started working Blue Note 3 years ago. 2019 and 2018. And before I went into that job, I would talk with trumpeter and composer David Weiss and producer David Weiss about this music. I mean, this is like, something that we live for. It's exciting to have these exchanges. And David was a guy who was one of the 3 producers alongside Michael Kaskuna and Bob Belden back in 1996. And I knew he had been tasked to go in, get the tapes, copies of them, and listen to everything that had been issued. I mean, everything that was recorded. And they recorded 3 complete evenings of sets of music on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4 nights. Unbelievable. But I was absolutely, and this is one of my favorite records. It's interesting because it was this different phase of Lee Morgan. It's different from listening to City of Lights or The Cooker, or In Search of the New Land. This was a different vision and a place where he was headed. And I remember how excited for decades I was about this music. That 3 CD set, I played the thing to death. I took it on road trips. I played it for all my friends. You got to hear this. And I was astonished to learn that there was all of this music that was still left in the can. And I remember having this conversation with David. David, how good was the other music? It was actually really good, Zev. And he was the guy that had to choose one tune of everything. And so it was like there was all this music that was left. And there really was a lot of great music that was left. It worked out this way. So I went into Blue Note and I explained about this. And it was like, you guys have this. And we pulled it. David listened to it. He graded everything like with a discerning ear, not just like, hey, we want this to happen. Because you know what? You're not serving the legacy of the artist if the music isn't hot, or that distinction again between good and great. But it was great. And it was an important document. And I was like, you could assemble like we did, like Sony did when they put out the Plug Nickel box set, or Coltrane at the Village Vanguard. There have been a number of these complete kind of boxes. Lee Morgan was deserving of having a treatment, but most importantly, the music was great. And it lent itself towards going back and laying it out set by set. And more importantly, it paved the way of having an opportunity of paying tribute to a guy who has inspired so many of us. I mean, all these decades now after his passing, we're able to go back, and it was exciting listening to different ideas being generated and the solos and the playing, but being able to pull yourself up a chair and choosing, hey, I want to be on the 3rd set Saturday night. Maybe I want to be at the 1st set on Friday. I don't want to be at that last set. And getting in that time machine. I love that we were able to do that. And then it was like, this is interesting. We went through the archives at Capitol and Iron Mountain, and we realized that there was all these photographs that were never published, that were like missing puzzle pieces, elements that people who knew the original project would recognize and feel, things that they hadn't seen before. And was like, wow, the music's really great. And like the conceptualized, the idea of what it could be came together. But Don said, this is important. We should do this. And he is the guy that put the key in the ignition and started the car. all I did was go to him and saying, we could do this. I would
Mhm.
love to do it. And I have to tell you, it's really a to die for experience. It's maybe one of the most exciting journeys that I've been on. It was a team effort from a whole label and two labels, the Blue Note staff, but also Universal Music Enterprises. And it took Don Was and Harry Weinger saying, we're going to do this. And it didn't have to happen. It's a high price tag. Oh my gosh. And then I think about Field of Dreams, right? Kevin Costner and that voice. If you build it, they will come.
Mhm.
And they came.
Mm.
And it was like rejoice. And it made people happy. It made me happy. I'm so proud of that. That may be one of the most exciting productions that I was ever a part of. Yeah.
Now, when you have a project like Lee Morgan Live at the Lighthouse, the full set, you got Bill Evans, Some Other Time. On vinyl, these have sold out so quickly, and now the prices are starting to rise. Do you get involved? Do you start thinking about, okay, maybe we should reissue this at some point?
Well, the Lee Morgan and the Art Blakey, those aren't record store day releases. And Blue Note has a methodology for the way that they operate. Resonance has a way that they do. Now, at Resonance, for instance, where there has been a desire for this release to be reissued, we have actually gone back to record store day and say, hey, can we repress this? And when I do that, typically, it involves, I want to make it interesting. I like to use a different mastering engineer. Maybe I use Kevin Gray on the first. Well, I'll use Grunman on the second, or vice versa.
Mm.
I try to at least do something a little bit different, right? And that's been something. So yeah, I have no problem with revisiting these releases, but oftentimes they are exclusives. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes exclusive to Record Store Day. So I have to I have to go to them. I'm very respectful. They have made so much of the magic possible.
Mm.
And without them, a lot of these projects couldn't be born.
With Monk and Palo Alto, tell me a bit
Yes.
about those tapes. From what I understand, they weren't even known about for many, many years. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, Danny Scher, who worked for Bill Graham, had these recordings that he had made at his high school. I became aware of those tapes because of the Monk family, who I'm honored to say are dear friends of mine, and we've known each other for a number of years, and they've been very big supporters of me. Um, you know, I knew about those recordings, and actually there had originally been another record label in the mix, and it didn't work out. We're talking about doing deal making. Sometimes you can't make everything work within one party, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
pivot and finding another way for it to come out. But the folks at Universal, Ken Drucker and Verve Label Group and Impulse Records, recognized this project. I had introduced them to the Monk family, and we started talking about these recordings. And anyways, I'm digressing, but that was another special journey. I knew about those tapes because of my relationship with the family. They were the ones that shared with me that, hey, we have these recordings, would love to work with you. I was like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's some of these families I'm good friends with, and I love staying in touch with. And when news breaks, maybe a tape comes to mind. Maybe I'll get a phone call about something if I'm lucky enough to be invited to be involved. But the Monk Palo Alto recording was really, again, one of those triumphs in terms of a story and a great recording. And it was music that needed to come out, and it made a lot of people really happy.
I seem to recall the story of Monk Palo Alto. Correct me if I'm wrong, but some high school kid wrote to Monk asking him to play his high school, and Monk was playing in San Francisco. Palo Alto is maybe an hour south of San Francisco. So Monk essentially did a gig at a high school for cash, and then buggered off to do his originally planned show in San Francisco that night. Is that kind of the rough outline?
That sounds about roughly it, but it's Danny Scher who booked Monk to play his high school and had the janitor for the school run tape and got the tape and had it tucked away for all these years. I mean, I'm telling you, we find tapes all the time that are stashed under the bed or in somebody's attic. And it's amazing. Like, yeah, stuff is still coming to light all these years.
Now, the condition of a lot of tapes that I would imagine you would find are quite bad because, you know, you have to keep tapes in a specific environment and whatnot. Do you run into a lot of situations where this tape would have been great if it had been not stuffed away in an attic for a couple decades?
I knew a tape, a very rare document. One of the tapes survived. It hasn't been released yet. And another part of it melted. It was stored in an RV on somebody's property, probably baked in the sun for decades. And that tape literally melted. Miraculously, the other tape survived. You know, there's conditions to stuff, you know, like there's certainly, you hope for the best. There are tapes that will break and snap, things that happen in the process. Like, again, it's like you really got to work with the right people that know how to handle these sort of materials. And like mastering engineers are so important. It's really exciting. I've learned so much. Before I started doing this side of the business, I was a novice. I didn't understand, but we do we do experience all sorts of things that happen sometimes, from the quality of the tapes, and you have to determine if they need to be baked. A lot of the times, because of the mylar that was used in the creation of these tapes, sometimes, like if you have a tape typically from the 70s, I would say chances are it's probably going to need to be baked. There's a whole process, literally going into a kiln. Oh my God, it's fascinating. And I think you should have a recording engineer on to talk about what they have to do sometimes. But it's a process, and it's part of this whole adventure. You know, these different variables. Think about it. At any time you got something, I mean, you see what it is. An artist and a recording could be holy grail. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make its way to the finish line. Right. All these other factors have to line up, and it's a crapshoot sometimes. But when it's meant to be, and it's totally magical.
Now, we've talked to Don and Joe about the Blue Note archive, and we're very lucky that they've taken very good care of those tapes for decades and decades. You have free reign in the Blue Note archive, I believe. What other gems are in there that maybe haven't seen the light of day? What do you think we can expect in the future from that?
Well, there's some things in there. You know, to be a kid in a candy store is one thing, but you can't eat all the candy for obvious reasons, because sometimes it's not supposed to come out. There's a reason why some things got left on the shelf. And there's also because of different factors from performance. But you know what? It's really interesting. As time and these decades march on, certain artists, like, look, Lee Morgan live at the Lighthouse, that was like having Dead Sea Scrolls in your archives. And it was like, you know what? The music checked out. That was most important. And then it was like, we have to really evaluate, could we do this? And should we do this? Does it honor the legacy? But just because there are extra takes and things that have never been out, that is not carte blanche to think that, hey, it should all come out. There's a reason. You got to listen. And that's why, like, I really like to work with musicians like David Weiss, who has a different perspective from being a musician, who can articulate to me, you know what, it really wasn't coming together there, Zev. Some things are noticeable, and some things I like to have somebody else's ears on them. And I think that's important too. It takes a team to make these evaluations. But just I imagine the same is true with other record labels too. I'm sure there's stuff that we can look at now that's important, but you can't just be like, it shouldn't all just come out just because it's there. You got to have a discerning ear. You have to think, is it going to serve the artist's legacy?
So looking forward a bit, I'm sure you're working on several projects at any given moment. What are some of the things that we can look forward to in 2022 and beyond?
Oh, man. Well, I just want to say I've just been so fortunate to work with a handful of labels that have really made me very happy in realizing a lot of dreams, to continuing to working on the legacies of artists that I admire. This coming Record Store Day in April is going to be a very exciting period. I've literally got 5 releases coming out. I got to ask you, when is this when is this podcast going to air exactly?
Well, I was hoping for next week.
I've got some things that I'm embargoed on until they make an announcement.
When are they going to make the announcement?
Middle of February.
Got it. Okay.
Why don't I just make some general broad strokes?
There you go.
Okay. I mean, I'm very fortunate. Like I was telling you before, the folks at Record Store Day have really been instrumental in making this record producer very happy, because they are able to provide a means for projects to come out officially with people getting paid and providing an infrastructure for these recordings to exist. But this coming April is going to be an unbelievable time for me, and I'm very excited. I've literally got 5 productions coming. There's going to be an announcement coming from Record Store Day very shortly. But if you're a fan of Bill Evans or Albert Eiler or Chet Baker or Charles Mingus, put on your seatbelt. I want you to sit down when the announcement comes out. But it's so exciting, because this is like unveiling day is a really special day when you work on these projects, when you can finally announce to the world what you've been working on and what you've been keeping a secret for so long. I'm really passionate about this music. Mm-hmm. It's art. It's so important. It's America's classical music, and I feel so lucky to be a part of it. But there's going to be some earth-shattering announcements of unreleased music previously for people to listen to, and I think it should raise some smiles. I just want people to be as happy and as inspired as I am. I want to say this too. I'm so grateful to everyone out there, anyone that has ever bought a project with my name on it. There are so many different things that you could be spending your money on. And I know that this money is very hard earned, but it means a lot to me, and I will keep doing the best job that I can. I just want us to keep going together. There's more work for us to do. There's more art to unveil, and there's more legacies of these artists to celebrate. But we're all in this together, and it's a really joyous thing. So I'm so grateful to you, Nate, for inviting me on today. You've had so many incredible people on this podcast, and I feel honored and to be a part of it. So thanks for having me.
You belong on here, man. So many records that I love. In recent years, I'm flipping through. It's like Zev Feldman again. Zev Feldman again. I got to talk to this guy. How are his fingerprints all over some of my favorite releases of the last several years? So
I want to say something. 28 years ago, I was working overnights in a gas station while going to college, only dreaming of possibly maybe even doing any of this work. It's a dream come true. I want to give my life to this, man. It's my life's work. It makes me happy. I'm so grateful. I've been on the bottom of the shoe, and I just want to have express and being gratitude to everybody out there that's been a part of this. You've made me so happy, but I work for everybody. I work for all of you. Let's just keep doing this. We're in this together. Let's support this art. Onward and upward.
Well said, Zev. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely have to have you back when we have the announcements for Record Store Day, and let's talk about these releases. I'd love to hear the story on them.
Can't wait to share. All right.
Oh man, we definitely have to have Zev back. Thank you so much, Zev, for darkening our door. And don't forget, there's an extended version of this conversation available at patreon.com/Vinyl Guide. Go up there now, support the show. We will be forever grateful. I want to remind everyone that there's some amazing jazz titles released in the past few years. You'd want to try to get your hands on if you don't have them already. It's miraculous that they survive and they're now released and they're able to get got. I'm talking about the Lee Morgan Live at the Lighthouse box set, John Coltrane, A Love Supreme live in Seattle, Thelonious Monk, Palo Alto, Art Blakey, First Flight from Tokyo. I just listened to that again today. Amazing recording. They all come with these beautiful booklets and essays, and it's not just the records, it's not just the music, it's the whole package. And it's the sort of stuff like that that Zev works on and makes it so rewarding to own these products. Also, check out resonancerecords.org. This is the place where Zev worked. We didn't even talk about it that much at all, but go there now, resonancerecords.org. Browse their selection. There's an online store where you can grab vinyl and CDs and help support efforts like the ones we spoke about today. Thanks again, Zev. Hope to talk to you again soon. And that's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please share these episodes on your social media. Put them out on Facebook, tweet them out on Twitter, share them on Instagram. And those of you who are going up to Apple Music or wherever and leaving us positive 5 out of 5 star reviews, 10 out of 10, whatever, you guys are saying nice stuff. That is hugely appreciated. I encourage you all to do that as well. And we'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.
That's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Send your thoughts to Nate at thevinylguide.com or follow or tag us on Instagram at Vinyl Guide. Until next time, keep spinning.